Hi, I'm Tatiana Schlossberg. I'm so sorry that we won't be able to meet.
You go into the hospital to have your baby. You come out with a terminal cancer diagnosis. And while you're fighting for your life, your own cousin, who happens to run the country's health system, is cutting funding for the kind of research that might one day save people like you. That's the real story of Tatiana Schlossberg. It's not just a Kennedy family tragedy. It's a case study in what happens when biology, politics, and science funding collide. And why that collision matters to you if you ever need chemo, a stem cell transplant, an artificial joint, or a future mRNA cancer vaccine. Hey everybody, Dr. Raynor here, orthopedic surgeon, sports doc, internet bone guy. On this channel, we usually talk about busted knees, weird injuries, and why your back hates you. But today we're going deeper. Blood, bone marrow, high-risk leukemia, and the future of cancer treatment. We're gonna break down who Tatiana Schlossberg was and why her story matters, what acute myeloid leukemia actually is, how political decisions about research funding show up in people's real lives, and yes, how all of this eventually lands on an orthopedic surgeon's table in the OR. If you've ever watched my videos on opioids and on how your body falls apart over time, you already know I care a lot about how system-level decisions affect your bones, your joints, and your lifespan. This story is another piece of that puzzle. So, quick background. Tatiana Schlossberg was an American journalist and environmental writer born in 1990. She wrote for the New York Times and other major outlets and published a book on how our everyday choices affect the environment.
So why'd you decide that we needed yet another book on climate change and the environment?
She was also Kennedy royalty, daughter of Carolyn Kennedy, former U.S. ambassador to Japan and Australia, granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. So what's her connection to the government? At the time she went public with her illness, her cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., wasn't just the vaccine skeptic guy on the internet. In this timeline, he's the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. That means he oversees things like the NIH, or the National Institute of Health, major chunks of federal research funding, and strategic decisions about which medical technologies the US backs or kills. Recently, he cut $500 million from federal mRNA research and shut down more than 20 BARDA-funded mRNA projects, claiming the tech doesn't work well enough. Tatiana publicly called him out for it in a New Yorker essay, while knowing she probably wouldn't live long enough to see how that decision plays out. We'll come back to that. Tatiana's story gets brutal very fast.
This is unfortunately, a very sad case because this, while it makes up about 1% of cancers, she's in the 1% of that category with a very rare mutation called inversion 3, which significantly impacts someone's prognosis and their ability to be treated.
In 2024, just after giving birth to her second child, her doctors noticed that her blood work looked off. High white blood cell counts, abnormal cells.
Her white blood cell count, according to what she divulged, was about 10 times higher than what it should be.
The diagnosis, acute myeloid leukemia, or AML. Not just any AML, but a rare version with something called inversion 3, a chromosome 3 abnormality that makes the disease extremely aggressive and hard to treat. She went through the whole modern playbook: intensive chemotherapy, a stem cell or bone marrow transplant from her sister Rose, and a clinical trial with CAR T-cell therapy, which is an advanced experimental immunotherapy usually used for other blood cancers. Even with all of that, her leukemia kept coming back. By late 2025, she wrote an essay in the New Yorker called A Battle with My Blood, where she revealed her doctors had told her she likely had about 1 year to live.
I had a son whom I loved more than anything and a newborn I needed to take care of. This could not possibly be my life.
On December 30th, 2025, Tatiana died at the age of 35 from AML. 2 young kids, a husband, parents, siblings, and a health policy fight she knew she would only see the beginning of. So what actually was she fighting? To get that, we have to talk about AML itself. You've got bone marrow. Think of it as your body's blood factory that lives inside your bones. Normally, stem cells in your marrow grow up into red cells, which carry oxygen, white cells that fight infection, and platelets that help you clot. In acute myeloid leukemia, the myeloid stem cells go off the rails. They get stuck in an immature form called blasts, and those blasts multiply like crazy, don't do their job, and crowd out the healthy cells in the bone marrow and blood.
So the mature cells there's no room for them anymore because the immature cells in that assembly line just proliferate unchecked, and that's what cancer is in general.
So the person ends up with anemia, fatigue, shortness of breath, low platelets, bruising and bleeding, dysfunctional white cells, infections that won't quit.
You can look pale, you can feel fatigued, unintentional weight loss, or night sweats. People can have all sorts of symptoms as a result of the other blood cells not functioning properly because these crowd everything else out.
It's called acute because it comes on fast and gets deadly quickly if untreated, unlike slower diseases like chronic leukemias.
So it can really wreak havoc, or like in her case, it can be asymptomatic and found incidentally on a blood test.
So how is this different from other blood cancers? Compared to ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, AML is a disease of myeloid cells, not lymphoid cells. The age profiles, genetics, and treatments differ between the two. Compared to CML, or chronic myeloid leukemia, or other chronic leukemias, AML is a sprint, not a marathon. It can kill in weeks to months without treatment, whereas some slow leukemias can be watched for years. And within AML, there are 3 subtypes. Some are relatively treatable, like acute promyelocytic leukemia. Others, like Tatiana's in version 3 AML, have absolutely brutal outcomes even with aggressive therapy. So let's talk numbers because this is where it gets heavy. For adult AML overall, roughly 30 to 35% of adults survive 5 years or more. In some people under 60, that can push up toward the mid-30s. Over 60, survival drops closer to 10%. But AML is not one disease. Your prognosis depends on a whole bunch of factors. Now, for the particular subtype of inversion 3 AML that Tatiana had, it's rare. About 1.4 to 1.6% of AML cases. Median survival is often under 1 year, even with treatment. One large study showed median survival around 8 to 10 months, and 5-year survival close to 15 to 20% at best.
So the duration of life expectancy for a patient with AML at first is unknowable for the specific patient.
In other words, biologically, this disease is playing on nightmare difficulty. And that's the context in which Tatiana is staring at experimental therapies like CAR-T and wondering if there's anything left that could buy her time. Let's walk through the standard playbook she actually went through. Induction chemotherapy. Classic regimen is 7+3. 7 days of cytarabine plus 3 days of an anthracycline like daunorubicin. The goal is to knock the leukemia back into remission, meaning blasts disappear from the blood and bone marrow. Consolidation and transplant. If remission is achieved, high-risk patients are pushed towards allogenic hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, HSCT, using a donor's marrow or stem cells. That's what Tatiana got from her sister Rose.
So debilitating to human. Your quality of life is completely altered, consistently immunocompromised. You can't even be around public because it's so high risk for you. You have like no immune system.
Depending on mutation profile, you might see drugs like FLT3 inhibitors, midostaurin or gilteritinib, IDH1 or IDH2 inhibitors, or venetoclax added to low-intensity regimens in older or unfit patients. These can improve remission rates and survival in certain subgroups. Overall, for many standard AML cases, combining chemo-targeted agents and transplant can push long-term survival substantially higher than historical numbers, especially in younger, fit patients. But in very high-risk genetics like inversion 3, transplant is often the only real shot at a cure. And even then, success rates are painfully low. That's why there's so much urgency around new treatments. There are several categories of next-gen therapies being tested for AML. CAR T-cell therapy. You take patients' T-cells, engineer them to recognize leukemia markers like CD33 or CD123, then reinfuse them to hunt down AML cells. Early trials and preclinical work show these CAR Ts can wipe out leukemia in models, but toxicity and off-target effects are big issues because those targets are shared with healthy marrow cells. Newer designs use clever logic-gated CARs, for example, Synotch if-then systems, dual CD3, CD123 targeting to reduce collateral damage. And they're moving towards phase 1 and 2 trials now. Dendritic cell and peptide vaccines. AML vaccines that load patients' immune cells with leukemia antigens or even AML-derived mRNA are being tested to keep patients in remission after chemo or transplant. mRNA cancer vaccines. This is where Tatiana's story collides with RFK Jr.'s policy.
The way I think of it, it's like the difference between a friend calling up and saying, "Hey, I really fancied that dish you cooked the other day. Can you make it for me again?" Or maybe they call up and say, "Hey, can you send me the recipe for the dish I liked?" One's a lot easier, which is why the COVID mRNA vaccines could be rolled out so fast.
After COVID, we learned that mRNA tech is a powerful way to teach the immune system to recognize specific proteins. Cancer researchers grabbed that tech and started building personalized mRNA vaccines that encode neoantigens unique to a patient's tumor. In melanoma, adding a personalized mRNA vaccine like mRNA 4157 to checkpoint inhibitors has already shown better relapse-free survival than immunotherapy alone in phase 2 trials. For AML specifically, researchers are identifying AML-specific antigens and neoantigens, designing mRNA constructs to present those to the immune system, running early phase trials where vaccines are used after chemo or transplant to clean up minimal residual disease, or MRD.
This is one of the most exciting observations I have seen in my 20-year career as a cancer researcher. I think the confirmatory work in a prospective trial is of the utmost importance and urgency.
We're not at standard of care yet, but the direction of travel is clear. Use precision immunotherapy and mRNA platforms to train the immune system to finish the job chemo started. Could this have saved Tatiana? Given how aggressive inversion 3 AML is, there's no guarantee. But if you zoom out, for future patients with similar biology, these are likely the tools that will move survival from almost hopeless to realistic shot, which is exactly why cutting this research is such a big deal. Let's simplify mRNA cancer vaccines in 3 steps. Number 1, read the enemy. You sequence the patient's tumor or leukemia to identify specific abnormal proteins or neoantigens that the immune system could recognize. Number 2, write the training manual. You design an mRNA recipe for those antigens, package it into a lipid nanoparticle, and inject it. The patient's cells briefly produce these antigens like tiny wanted posters. Number 3, deploy the army. Immune system sees those antigens, trains T cells that specifically recognize them, and hunts down any remaining cancer cells carrying that target. mRNA platforms are fast. You can design and manufacture a personalized vaccine in weeks, which matters in aggressive diseases. Now, tie this back to policy.
Schlossberg is critical of her cousin HHS Secretary RFK Jr. for cutting funding to critical cancer research, calling it an embarrassment to me and the rest of my immediate family.
In 2025, RFK Jr. as HHS Secretary pulls around $500 million from mRNA research programs, including cancer-related platforms, arguing the tech failed for respiratory infection prevention.
NIH-funded cancer research saved 3.5 million lives between 1991 and 2019 and reduced the overall cancer death rate by 33%.
Independent analyses have pointed out that the science he cites doesn't support those cuts, and that mRNA has strong data for both infectious disease and cancer immunotherapy synergy.
Congress has spent nearly 100 years building up the world's premier biomedical research agency to develop state-of-the-art treatments that wouldn't have been thinkable just decades ago. And in just 100 days, this administration is starting to tear it all down.
So you've got this weird situation where one side of the government is defunding mRNA, another side is doubling down, and private companies and universities are still pushing forward because the data is promising.
To think that this nation would walk away from medical research, for God's sake. We lead the world in medical research. Why would we give up on it?
From Tatiana's perspective, that's not an abstract policy fight. She is literally watching the clock run out on her own life while the tools that might help patients like her in 5, 10, 15 years get slowed down.
She talks about this in her essay as well, the importance of having funding towards experimental therapies to give people like her and other people hope.
She knows she probably won't be around to see those trials read out, but someone else's kid will be. That's what she was trying to protect. All right, so let's bring this back to my lane, because you might be thinking, okay, Chris, this is leukemia, not knees. Why do you care so much? Cancer therapy wrecks bone and joint health. Period. The treatments Tatiana went through, high-dose chemo, stem cell transplant, long-term steroids, and immunosuppressants all have major consequences on the skeleton. Chemo and transplant are linked to rapid bone mineral density loss, osteoporosis, and fragility fractures in survivors. After hematopoietic stem cell transplant, patients can lose 10 to 20% of bone density within 2 years and are at an increased risk of spontaneous fractures and avascular necrosis in major joints like the hip. Glucocorticoids, or in other words, steroids, used for graft versus host disease, are one of the most common causes of iatrogenic osteoporosis and AVN in adults, with fractures in up to 30 to 50% of long-term users. Who deals with the broken hips, collapsed femoral heads, and crushed vertebrae that come out of that? orthopedic surgeons. If we can treat AML and other cancers more precisely, with less global chemo, less steroid exposure, more targeted immunotherapy, and mRNA-based vaccines, we potentially preserve more bone density, reduce AVN risk, and improve wound healing and reduce infection risk after orthopedic procedures. So from where I sit, mRNA cancer vaccines, smarter CAR T designs, and better bone health protocols for cancer survivors are not just cool science. They're the difference between a 40-year-old leukemia survivor needing a hip replacement and crutches, or keeping his native joint and playing pickup basketball with his kids. That's why I care. And that's why Tatiana's story, even though I never treated her, lands in my world. For high-risk genetic groups like inversion 3, they will probably be early candidates for aggressive immunotherapy and vaccine strategies because standard options are so limited. But how fast we get there depends on stable, evidence-based research funding, clinical trial infrastructure that doesn't get whiplash every time politics change, and public trust in technologies like mRNA built on transparent data, not conspiracy posts. Right now, despite federal cuts from HHS, mRNA cancer vaccine work is still moving forward with support from defense, academic centers, and international partnerships. So there is a path forward. The question is how many people we lose in the slower version of that timeline. Tatiana is one of those people. We can't rewrite her story. She's already gone. But if you take her essay and her criticisms of RFK Jr. seriously, she's basically saying, if you cut research now, you are deciding who gets options 10 years from now. You cannot just say you care about saving lives while you casually defund the pipeline that produces those life-saving tools. All right, enough doom. What are the levers regular humans actually have? Support evidence-based research organizations. Things like the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, major cancer centers, or organizations funding AML-specific work and immunotherapy. Be part of the donor infrastructure. Join a bone marrow donor registry if you're eligible. Donate blood and platelets. AML patients burn through both during treatment. Engage with policy, but stay evidence-driven. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but when you evaluate candidates or policies, look at their track record on NIH, NCI, and BARDA funding, whether they listen to peer-reviewed science or cherry pick it. If you're a patient or caregiver, ask about clinical trials early. Ask specifically whether there are immunotherapy or vaccine trials suitable for your subtype. Ask about bone health protection if you're getting steroids, chemo, or transplant. Take care of the basics. For my ortho people, lift weights, eat enough protein, don't smoke, and don't ignore vitamin D and calcium. If you ever have to go through something like chemo or transplant, a stronger musculoskeletal baseline helps you survive rehab and surgery on the other side. Tatiana Schlossberg wrote that her brain kept replaying memories because she didn't have much time to make new ones. She knew she was probably not going to see her kids grow up. She knew the science she believed in wouldn't mature fast enough to save her. And she still used what time she had to fight for a future where those tools would exist for someone else. That's the part I don't want us to miss. Behind every abstract argument about mRNA this or NIH funding that, there's a human being lying in a hospital bed counting how many chances they have left. So yeah, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I fix bones and joints. But the reason I care about this stuff, and the reason you should care, is that medicine is one big interconnected machine. You can't pull out the research engine and expect the surgical side, the rehab side, the survivorship side to keep working the way you want. If you want a future where leukemia is less of a death sentence, cancer survivors don't end up with shattered hips at 40, and your kids can get cutting-edge care if life blindsides them, then you have to care about stories like Tatiana's. If you learned something today, hit like, share this with someone who still thinks mRNA is just for COVID, and check the description for links to AML and bone health resources. I'm Dr. Chris Raynor. Take care of your body, take care of your brain, and maybe today, also take care of the science that might save your life one day.